Welcome to another Azure Guide video for Terraform Associate. I am an Azure Administrator Associate, Azure Security Engineer, Azure Solutions Architect, and a certified Kubernetes application developer. Terraform Video 3, Creating a VM. Skill level for this video is marked as medium. What resources are needed before you create a VM in Azure using Terraform? We need to find the provider. In this case, it will be Azure. We need to create the resources necessary for a VM, which are resource group, Vnet, Subnet, Nic, and the Nic needs to have an IP address, either public, private, or one of each. In this case, we're going to create only a private IP address. Then, of course, we create the VM. For the VM, you need to find the OS disk and an image. To follow along, create a folder named Video 3 and create a file named main.tf. Let's get started. Alright, welcome to the video. First step is to define the provider. And we're going to use Azure and use provider. We can click right here and get some information, or we go to documentation, choose Azure RM provider, and we get some more. And these are the 4 ways you can authenticate to Azure. We're going to do the command line. And you can see if you need to log into Azure, do an AZ login. But I'm already logged in, so I'm okay. And we can use this one right here. All we need. So I'm going to take this, copy, and paste. Alright. Now, majority of this video, since I'm assuming everyone watching is probably beginning with Terraform, I think it's important that you learn. The best way to learn, I believe, is some manual typing. So I'm going to limit the copy and pasting for now as we progress through the series. Of course, we'll be copy and pasting more. But I think it's important that you learn how to use Visual Studio Code and learn the syntax. So we're going to try it that way. So the first thing we need is to create a resource. And we're going to create a resource group. So I'm just going to say Control Space Bar. These are all the different choices you have. We want a resource because we want to define an Azure resource. And what do we want? We want an Azure resource group. They all begin with Azure RM underscore. If you don't see what you want, like I want resource group underscore, I'm going to type in R. And there's a resource group. And I have to give it a name. Now this is not the name of the resource group. This is the name that Terraform is going to refer to this resource. So I'm going to call it video3.rg. If that's confusing right now, don't worry. By the end of this video, I think you'll have a good understanding. Well, what does a resource group in Azure need? Well, it needs a name, a location at the very least. If you didn't know that, you could just hit Control Space Bar, get a list of choices, and just scroll down. Look, location is required. So, location, I'm going to say East US 2. Now, of course, I could use variables, but I'm going to keep it straightforward and just learn one thing per video. So we'll come back in the next video and make this a little more professional. But right now we got location. It probably needs a resource group. So I'm going to type in R. Oh, we're creating a resource group, so it doesn't need a resource group. It needs we got location, a name. It needs a name required. And remember, this is the actual name of the resource group in Azure. I'm going to call this video 3 and -rg. And I think that's all a video resource group needs. So we'll clean up a little bit. All right. Well, what other resource do we need? Well, we need a Vnet. Control spacebar, resource, AZURERM _ and Vnet. So I'll type a V. Virtual machine, no. How about virtual network? Yes. Again, the name. This is not the name that Azure is going to call it, but it's how Terraform is going to refer to it. I'm going to call it video3.vnet. And a virtual network needs a location, I would imagine. Actually, before we do that, yeah, let's do location now. Now I could type in East US 3. The bad part about that, or East US 2. The bad part there is, if I change this, I'm going to have to come here and change this one as well. So I could refer to this resource's location, for this location. Confused? Let's see. So I'm going to type in this tag up here. So I'm going to say Azure RM _ look at that, it pops right in there for me. Azure resource group dot video3 RG. And what do I want from that resource? Well, I want the location. Boom. And how about virtual network also needs a name, right? Required. And let's call this video3 _ Vnet. Can I have underscores? Well, we'll see. I can't remember. And it needs an address space. You can see it's required. And it has to be in an array. Whoops. And I'm going to use, I know this is not being used anywhere in my subscription, 172.0.0/16. And I lost my closed parentheses somehow. There we go. Now I think that's all the Azure Virtual Network needs. But let's say if I wasn't sure, or I couldn't even get this far. What I can do is use my good friend documentation. And what I would like to do is Google like the documentation. So I'm going to put up a new tab here. Type in Terraform Azure Vnet Azure resource Vnet. And here we go. This is what color we want. If I come here, it's going to bring me right to the documentation for Azure RM Virtual Network. And I'll be able to see here what do I need. Well, I got my name, got my location, and I got my address space. So that's good. The other thing I need is a subnet. So I'm going to go back to here and put resource subnet. Here we go. Now this one, I don't need any kind of delegation. So I'm just going to take this to here. Actually, I'm just going to take this right in there. You'll see what I'm doing. Yes, I'm breaking my copy paste rule, but you know, if you want to type it out, feel free. But I'm going to say here, resource, Azure RM Subnet. I'm going to give it a name of Video 3 Subnet. Then here, and paste. And I want here, I don't want this to be called example subnet. I want it to be called Video 3 Subnet. And this, of course, has to be changed to match my Vnet 172.16.1. And that got my subnet done. So the next thing left is my Nic. Well, you can guess what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go and do the same thing here, but Azure Resource Nic. Look what we left off. Well, we'll go. We might have left something off on our subnets. Because you're right, we have to somehow get the subnet referred to our VNets. And do we have this line in our VNets? Let's see. We do, but it's wrong. This should be... You guys think about what it should be. You guys tell me. Give you 10 seconds. If you said video 3 vnet dot name, you'd be correct. All right, let's go back down to our network card, and we're going to go back to our web page, but first let's get it ready for us. Resource AZURERM underscore is probably starts with an N for Nic. Yep, network interface. And you can probably guess what we're going to call it. Video 3 Nic. And let's cheat again and see what it needs. Network card name, location, and resource group. And then we need this IP configuration stuff. All right, so we got this. We're going to take this, this, and this. And we're going to have to do some editing, I believe. All right, so the name, we don't want that. We'll just call it Video 3 Nic. And location, this should be not example, but Video 3 RG. I'm gonna so I can avoid typos. Resource group again. Video 3 RG. Okay, internal's okay. Subnet ID again. This should be Video 3 Subnet. Yep, and ID. Somehow we got too many. Well, we'll worry about that later in a second. And private IP address allocation dynamic. Argument block required. We got too many. So can I get rid of this one? That should do it. All right. That looks good. So notice that the Nic, this part here, the IP config is part of the Nic resource. And you see that in these colored parentheses, which is cool. Inner purple, outer yellow. All right, I'm going to save my file. All right, before we get too far ahead, let's go ahead and see if we can deploy what we have. So Terraform and Nic. Excellent. Terraform plan. Oh, got a little problem here. Line 21. Or resource groups required, but no action was found. Line 21. Virtual network. Oh, how about that? You gotta have a resource group there, huh? Resource group name. And of course, I could come here. Dot name. All right, save it. Let's try that again. All right, got down to line 30 this time. Resource Azure Subnet, resource group name. Oh, it's got example. Something we forgot to. That's one of the bad things about pasting. Here we go. Can I do a space bar? Yep, can. Dots, and we want it to be name. Now notice if I don't save my file, it's not going to see my change here. See, still complaining about line 30. Now I'm just going to save my file. And hopefully it won't catch line 30, because this would be a bad example then. But my point is, if you don't save the file, it's still going to report it as a problem, even though you might have solved it. And I think it is going to pass validation this time. Yep, it's telling me I'm going to have 4 things to add. And you see the plus signs of what I'm going to add. I'll go ahead and clear the screen and do an apply. While that's running, let's take a look at what we need to create a VM. Now, I've been Googling to get to the resources. You could also, if you know the category that it falls under in Azure, you can use this blade over here. So VMs fall under compute. And I'm going to come down here. You can see we got availability sets, disk access, a Linux virtual machine. Scrolling down some more, a shared image, Azure virtual machine. Well, let's click on that, see what we get. The Azure virtual machine has been superseded, big fancy word, by the Azure Linux virtual machine and the Azure Windows virtual machine. Well, right now we know we don't want to even bother with this. We want to go to Azure Windows Virtual Machine. So Azure Virtual Machine scale set, Azure Windows Virtual Machine. Here we go. And it tells you some information. None of this is really of interest to us right now. It does give us a nice example here. And you can see we're on a pretty good start. We define our provider already. We got our resource group already. We have our Vnet defined. We have our subnet defined. We have our interface all defined already. So here's what we're interested in. with the virtual machine. So just like always, we're going to define a resource. And this is the name for it. We're going to give it a name. We're going to use our fancy trick for resource group and location. We got to give it a size, username and password. Notice that it's in clear text here. We'll do it this way for now, but of course we'll learn better methods moving on. And then notice that you have to associate the interface with the network card with the virtual machine. And look how they did that. See here, they got Azure Network Interface Example ID. And that's the same as right here. So it's very much like the, can't think of the word, but the same way as we're doing it here. The same method with the same logic. So Azure Network Interface dot example. And we want, what do we want? Well, we want the ID. All right, so that's good. Then we got to define the disk. And we're just going to do one disk. And then we got to define the image and some of the details. So who's the publisher, who's the offer, the SKU, and the latest. So this is coming up. Let's go check on our status of our deployment here. Oh, I forgot I got to do a yes. All right, so this video has been going on for about 22 minutes, I believe. So I'm going to cut it here, and we'll have a part 2. And to get into part 2, we'll just finish that VM code looking at right here. And then we'll be all set to run it. And maybe also in part 2, we'll find some of this hard coding of stuff into variables. So that sounds like fun. All right, well, there we go. And my stuff created. So if you follow along next time, if you followed along up to here and everything's working, for the next one, just go ahead and destroy it. This way you save some money and you'll be all set for part 2. As always, thanks for watching.